So hello, everyone. My name is Lisa Newbert. I'm a librarian here at the Santa Barbara Public Library. Welcome to our virtual space and to our NEA Big Read, Santa Barbara Reads. Each year, the library invites the community to read the same book at the same time to spark conversations about issues that matter. Generously sponsored by the Santa Barbara Public Library Foundation annually, SB Reads gives the library the opportunity to give away hundreds of free books, to connect community members with one another, and to host conversations about important subjects. This year, our Santa Barbara Read selection is An American Sunrise by Joy Harjo, our current US poet and member of the Muskogee Nation. It's special because we're joining cultural institutions all over the country in the NEA Big Read program. NEA Big Read is a program of the National Endowment for the Arts in partnership with Arts Midwest. As part of this program and with their support, we're able to bring more books and more programming into the community, and we feel honored to be a part of a larger discussion about Joy Harjo's work. We hope you'll pick up a free copy of An American Sunrise at one of our branch locations, and will join us for our other SB Reads events. In the next week alone, we'll be hosting Tima Linkvota as part of our Trail Talk series and Nicholas Hummingbird presenting on native plants. Joy Harjo will be joining us for a virtual poem reading and Q&A on December 9th, and registration for all SB Reads events is open now on our website. Tonight, I'm thrilled to introduce this panel in collaboration with An American Indian Health and Services. The library is honored to be able to host these community leaders in this virtual space. So without further ado, I'm happy to hand things over to Oliver Murray and American Indian Health and Services.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. It's my pleasure to be taking part in putting this panel together in partnership with the Santa Barbara Public Library. So, Skutash, Ani Oliver Murray. So that means good day. My name is Oliver Murray. I use they and them pronouns, and I am the Youth and Families Advocate at American Indian Health and Services. And I'll hand it over to Heaven Estrada to introduce herself as well.
Thank you, Oliver. Haku Haku. My name is Heaven Estrada and pronouns she, her, hers. I am the Community Wellness Support Specialist here at American Indian Health and Services. And my heritage, I'm Chumash, Mexican, African American, and European. I'll pass it back to Oliver.
Thanks, Heaven. I wanted to share also that I am from the Akmal Atham Nation, and I am living here on Chumash land in Santa Barbara. I wanted to give some information about American Indian Health and Services. We're a community healthcare clinic located in Santa Barbara, and it's been serving the health and well-being of the community since 1994. Our mission is to promote and provide quality services to improve the health and well-being of American Indians, Alaska Natives, and all other community members in a vibrant community where American Indians and Alaska Natives and community are nurtured and include a balance of care for the mind, body, and spirit. We have several different departments, including medical services, dental services, behavioral health services, and our community wellness department, which speaks to those holistic well-being. So I'd like to go ahead and just provide a land acknowledgement before we begin our program today. So in the place where I live and where I work is known as Chumash land. The Smuich name for it is Suikstoon, and I have lived here in Suikstoon for most of my life, and it is a great privilege to be working and living in this place and breathe this air and drink this water and be in amazing harmony with all living things, and the place that Chumash people have taken care of since time immemorial. So thank you all very much for being here today. If you have any questions about American Indian Health and Services and what we are able to provide to our community and bringing events together like this, I'll go ahead and put my contact information into the chat. And I'd like to pass it over to Dana Barrios, who will be providing an opening blessing for us today so that we can come together in good spirits and be ready to have a great conversation. So thank you, Dana.
And start off You're good. We will go ahead and start out the introductions. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Dana Barrios. I am Ventureño Barbareño Chumash. I am a sociocultural anthropologist. I am the vice chair of the Barbareño Ventureño Band of Mission Indians. And I also am the site manager for Owens Valley Career Development Center's Ventura Tribal TANF office. I am grateful and honored to be working with Native communities for the past 10 years. I've done everything from, working with Native survivors of domestic violence and sex trafficking to doing work with mental health and suicide prevention. And I've just been really blessed to be able to work with community. And it's really a beautiful thing for me, and I'm really honored to be here. So that's a little bit about me. Teresa, would you mind introducing yourself?
Haku, good evening. My name is Teresa Romero, and I am an enrolled member of the Coastal Band of Chumash, and I'm really happy to be here this evening. I've been working with tribal communities directly for about 23 years now, so it's been a long time. I'm currently work at the Santa Ynez Band of Chumash Indians as their environmental director. I belong to a traditional plant collective, the Siyuktun Plant Collective, and some of our members are here this evening. I already know that's pretty wonderful. I see a lot of my cousins and relatives here this evening, and I just love our community. I am Coastal Chumash and Northern Chumash as well. And I'm very proud of my heritage, and I hope to be able to say some wonderful words this evening to you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. It's an honor to have you with us. Nancy, would you mind introducing yourself?
Half a day. Buenas. Sijus Matsi, thank you for bringing me into this space, and thank you, relatives, for having me. I am honored to be with you as always, and I appreciate you all. And thanks to Santa Barbara Reads and American Indian Health Services for partnering and having the presence of mind to do this. I am Chamorro and Mexican, but I was raised by a coastal band father, and I've been living on Chumash land for my entire life. I escaped to LA for fun and recreation and work, but mostly I'm here. I'm a caregiver and advocate to people that are dying. And it was a lot. It was, I got overloaded and decided to work with people in recovery and at-risk youth, and work with people of color and Native Americans. So here I am, and I guess I have more words to say, but I'm going to stop right there. Thank you. How about Kelly? Are you with us?
Haku liia. Kelly kakti kapapani shumolok hi sirtun ke eswachil. Lots of other villages too. That means haku everybody. Hello, my name is Kelly. I also go by Lele, so you might hear other people call me that. My pronouns are she, they, never she exclusively. So if you could sprinkle they in there every once in a while, I'd greatly appreciate it. It's so good to be here with you all. I'm excited to see where our conversation leads us and to spark new ideas and bring new beginnings and create community. I am a cultural artist. I do a lot of instruments, traditional instruments, and I also paint sort of modernly, but with like a touch of culture, because I had the privilege to be raised in my culture. Unlike my elders, I want to give a shout out to my elders and my parents and my grandparents who did a lot of work for me to be sitting here in my strong spirit that they've cultivated. I'm a seed that they've planted and watered, so I'm a plant too. Also, I do cultural tending to my plants, and I do community organizing with my youth and my cousins. A couple of my cousins are here. Shout out to them too. They've helped cultivate my spirit as well. I do poetry as well, kind of more low on the radar. But yeah, I don't know, it's hard to describe ourselves sometimes, so I'm gonna stop there. So yeah, thank you everyone. I'm excited.
I'm super excited to have everybody here, and thank you for the introductions. And we'll just go ahead and get started, and I'll ask the first question, and whoever, that comes to that feels that it's your turn to speak, just, there's no order in terms of who speaks. It's just when you feel the need to speak, absolutely go for it. So the first question is, in relation to ancestral memory, how has your relationship with place impacted you personally or professionally?
I'll go ahead and hopefully my internet will stay stable while I'm speaking. I have lived in different tribal communities, and it's been an amazing experience to live and learn from other places in Indigenous communities. It's been very, very powerful to me to be amongst people who have really strong tradition and displaced because they're still in their original homelands. And I did that for a number of years. And then I've come home now, and I worked for a community in Northern California, another coastal tribal community. And it was very, very powerful to me to be with a coastal tribe on their coastal land. And more importantly, I was able to restore coastal land to them. They were a coastal tribe that had no access to their coastal land. And it was so powerful and meaningful to me to do this for this community. I call it my life work. And I decided when the opportunity became available to come home and work for Chumash community, my own people and relatives. And I think that's just really, this is where I'm from. My family has been here forever. And it's hard to feel connected and displaced at the same time, and to not have access to the places that have historically and have always been with us and our ancestors. It feels almost criminal to have to pay to get into a state park to pray. There's just, we're displaced in our own homelands. And when I read Joy Harjo's An American Sunrise the first time, I reread it recently, I can feel all the pain in it that many of us have felt across their nations and the globe, really, because this is a global issue, to be removed from your homelands and not have access to your ancestral places. And I just, I want to just say that I'm blessed to at least be in my homelands.
I'm going to go. Again, I'll say that I was raised on this land, and my biological father is from Mesa, Guahan. He's an islander. My mom from Mexico. And I was raised in an era where we were supposed to be American. And it was conflicting, because in my child body, I always felt Indigenous. And my dreams and my cellular memory had me stretched beyond a physical and geographical boundaries that they were asking me to stay. And when I say they, I mean the institutions, the teachers and the schools. My father was a hunter, and he would go to these lands all over Utah, Montana, and during hunting season. So we hunted and planted when we could and raised our own animals to feed a big family. I grew up on the Mesa, so we kept all those things on the down low because we were not supposed to have animals. So both of my parents had their own set of skill sets that they learned from their parents and ancestors. But we were coming into a period of modern times and living in a predominantly Anglo community. You know, I was forced to assimilate, and it was very uncomfortable. Still, my parents tried to keep us present to food, to growing our own food, and gardening and milking the goats, and you know, fresh eggs and greens. We were healthy because we were living off the land. We weren't eating junk food. I mean, I would sneak out to get a Coke. I would use my money for church, and I'd go get a Coke and Fritos or something. But yeah, so as a child doing that and living in the Mesa, it was conflicting. And you know, apologies for the four-legged and the winged ones that I had to kill to eat. And I didn't. I put them down the garbage disposal because we grew up on the Mesa and we moved to a house. I felt it was like a fancy house and it had a garbage disposal. So it got the chicken and it got the birds. And we raised the birds in our 2-car garage. We hatched them, and it was interesting. It was interesting, and it was a learning thing, and I hated it as a child. But all in all, I learned a lot, and I learned how to respect land, and I learned how to pay attention to feeding the body well. So, you know, on a personal level, it gave me that healthy appreciation for land and nature. And it would go unattended until I got older, which is now. On a professional level, I was doing business management in Los Angeles, and it didn't fill me. So I came back, take a huge pay cut, and came back to Santa Barbara because I wanted to make a difference in my community, and I didn't know what that was. So I started working for a local land trust and stayed there for 15 years as an administrator. So we had access to a lot of land here. One of the gems was that the Dangerman property. And I don't know, it was freeing, and it just made me want to do my part as being a better steward. So Carl Jung said, what did you do as a child that made the hours pass like minutes? And this is the key to your earthly pursuits. And so as a kid, we were in the dirt, we were growing vegetables, we were doing those things. And I have to say that, true to that statement, those were my earthly pursuits. And again, I did not realize it. So here I am, and you know, recently retired. I'm trying to figure out how I can continue to feed our community. And this is a community I choose to spend my time with. So thanks, relatives, for having me.
Thanks, Nancy. Kelly, I'll repeat the question for you. In relation to ancestral memory, how has your relationship with place impacted you personally or professionally?
Yeah, thank you. That's, well, first of all, kakinalin to my aunties that spoke before me. Thank you for your story and your years dedicated to your communities. That's why we're here with you in these spaces. Your youth now. Yeah, we're coming up. So that's a huge question. I feel like there's so many different like angles I could come at it. Just, you know, from like an observer standpoint to just watching my elders and being able to have a story to answer that question is a privilege. I want to acknowledge that first of all, because a lot of our people, as we know, I may or may not know, a lot of our people, Indigenous people in our communities, are displaced, and we all suffer from a little bit of diaspora. And me being able to sit here on my land is a privilege, and so I want to acknowledge that and acknowledge that that's where my story is coming from a little privilege. So yeah, so I think that it's really given me that privilege again, right, to see. And I come from a family of healers. They don't all know it, but they are, as you know, healers don't. But and so I kind of got some of that healing energy, and so I feel a connection to people who don't have that connection to their land, because I know what it's like to have that connection to that land, if that makes sense. So I'm able to like hear with a different ear where people are coming from when they talk about community issues, or like issue with self, or like mental health issues, and issues with their art, and like struggles in school. And it's like I can see how that all stems from not being able to have access to our land, whether we live on our land or not, whether in an Indigenous community on our land or in another land. We have a lot of people that from other Indigenous communities in our Chumash community. And so we hold space for those people. And I think that's one of the most important things to me, actually, is being able to, again, the privilege, right? Being able to be on my land and not have to suffer from that mental illness of not being able to live on my land. And in turn, being able to have capacity to hold space for other people who do suffer from that. And being able to kind of be that connection to them, to say, hey, like, this is our land, like, come with us, and we'll hold ceremony on our land. Like, I know it's not your land, but we have this land and you're connected. And it makes the people who suffer from diaspora feel better about interacting with the land. Because I feel like when we go to other lands, it's sort of hard for us to just be like, oh yeah, let's put down some prayers. But it's like, well, whose homeland is this? If you don't know the caretakers of that land, do you know the land? Like, do you know the people who have learned that language from their ancestors, who've learned that language from the land? And so I think it's really important for us to be those speakers who've come from those ancestors, who know the language of the land, that have passed it down. And now we can connect other people to the land in all the work we do. And so I think it's really important that we recognize our places in that, being able to share that knowledge. Also, I'm part of Coastal Band of the Chumash Nation. And right now we are, all of the Chumash community, not just CBCN, is part of this kind of sort of land back thing that's happening across the street from our Sirtun Story Circle, where they want to give us space to build, not build, but cultivate a garden and put some plants down, right? And it was really difficult to sit in a meeting where, again, like Teresa was talking about, being on our land and not having access. Like, that's another intersection. That's another, like, you know, whatever. But yeah, so coming from that too, it's really difficult having to sit in a place and be like, oh, well, you know, the palm trees have been here for 100 years, 200 years, and blah, 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 blah. And also the hotel and the irrigation. And I'm like, and they're like, yeah, do we want to build a mound over it? Will the palm trees die? And it's like, there's a couple things that came to mind when they were talking about the palm trees. They were like, do we want to put dirt over the dirt, right? And they were like, well, are the palm trees going to survive? And first of all, like that language of the land, like if you look at the land as Indigenous people, you know that that land is sea level. And the palm trees aren't going to suffer or not get water because it's sea level, and the watershed is going to bring water to the palm trees. So they're going to be fine. Also, why are we prioritizing 200-year-old palm trees over Indigenous stewardship and Indigenous mental health and community building? So yeah, to be able to see that is a great privilege, I think. And I'll stop taking up space now. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. That was absolutely amazing. And I agree with all of you guys, like 100%. I think things that everybody said really rang true for me in some way, shape, or form. I think for me, when I think of ancestral memory, I kind of think of it kind of as twofold, right? I think of ancestral memory as genetic memory and as historical and intergenerational trauma, right? I think about ancestral memory in that way. But I also think about ancestral memory in regards to resiliency. And I'm not really a fan of the word resiliency, because we live in a world where we shouldn't have to be resilient, right? We shouldn't have to use this word of Native people are resilient, you know, like, because we shouldn't have had to be resilient to begin with. We shouldn't, but we've gone through genocide, and we've gone through acculturation, and we've gone through a lot, missionization, gold rush. I mean, you name it, we've been through it. And so we've had to be resilient. But I think through those hard times, while yes, historical and intergenerational trauma is passed on from generation to generation, so is intergenerational wisdom, so is that resiliency. So are those survival mechanisms that our ancestors had to learn so that we are all sitting here today, because without them, we wouldn't be here today. Without their resiliency and without their strength, we wouldn't be having this panel. We wouldn't be reading a book by Joy Harjo. We wouldn't be doing any of this. And so, but I think for me, you know, my story is a little different. You know, I was born and raised on the Ventura Avenue. You know, I lived in a trailer with my mom, and I didn't have much, and I was super disconnected from culture. You know, I grew up, I always knew I was Chumash and Ventura Chumash. That's something that my family was really proud of. But, you know, my great-grandfather and my grandfather didn't pass around any of that knowledge. And looking back, I saw the trauma when talking about that. I saw that it was very difficult to talk about that and to pass on that knowledge. And so, but when I was younger, you know, I used to play in the rivers, and I used to play on the lands, and I always had a really deep connection with the lands, and I didn't realize it at the time, but for me, that was my ancestral memory. That was my ancestors coming through the land, coming through me and connecting me with my land. Ooh, I get chills talking about it. And I'm just so grateful for them that they gave me that opportunity and that knowledge and that connection, because it saved me in more ways than one. And without the land here, I wouldn't probably be sitting here with everybody here today. In fact, I know I wouldn't be sitting here with people today, because the land literally saved me in many, many ways. But it was also hard growing up on this land. It's hard growing up in Ventura. It's hard when you can't even afford a home, and you're being pushed out of your own homelands. And when you see your people being pushed out of their own homelands, it's really hard to see that. And so I left to go to college. I went up to Sacramento and got some degrees and worked at the Sacramento Native American Health Center for a while, and was on somebody else's traditional homelands, you know, and I was really used to being able to hike and to connect with the lands. And that was my safe space, you know. But up there it was different. I had to reintroduce myself to the lands. I had to, build a relationship with the lands. And, I was doing community work with tribal communities from the north, and it was great and it was amazing. But I saw the same work taking place in the South home, and, it called back to me, and I moved back about almost 2 years ago now. And, the feeling of being away from your home is something that a piece of you is missing. I didn't feel whole. I was definitely not whole. I didn't have the mechanisms to self-soothe, I guess you could say, without my land. And so, I moved back and I have an apartment and I can see the islands, and every single day I wake up with a different space of gratitude because I know what it's like to not have that. And I can't even imagine, Kelly, you talked about the privilege of that and you nailed that. I mean, it is such a privilege to be sitting on my homelands. With that being said, I feel like there's a different level of responsibility to my homelands. And I always use the statue of Father Sarah as an example. Growing up, like I said, I grew up on the avenue and I drove by that Father Sarah statue almost every single day. And the ancestral memories, right? That trauma that ensued and made me feel that was on a daily basis, and it still is. Like living on your homelands is fantastic and it's beautiful and it's amazing in so many ways, but with that also comes a lot of triggers. It comes with a lot of pain sometimes because you have a different type of feeling and love for what you're doing, and it makes the sadness kind of more exacerbated, I think, sometimes. And so when I got home when I was younger, I used to be like, I'm going to take that statue down one day. I'm going to take that damn statue down. And so I got home and I was like, dang it, that's on my list, and then it just so happened all the BLM stuff was happening, and it inspired this movement of taking power back, I think. And when that statue started, when talks started happening, we would get on all these city council meetings. I met with Father Tom from the mission, and we would have all these meetings and having to teach people about, trauma and ancestral memory, historical trauma, because people would be like, it's just a statue. And they didn't understand the ancestral memory attached to that statue and what that means to us, to those of us that had our ancestors had to fight and survive the mission system and still are fighting to survive that mission system. And so for me, but seeing that down now, we got it taken down, and now I drive to my mom's all the time and I drive right by that statue and I see beautiful open land and I'm like, bye, Father Sarah, like we did that, so there's a feeling of, we got this, slowly but surely we're starting to do this, and we're starting to, talk about land back movements. We're starting to show up at these city council meetings and making our voices heard, making our presence felt. And I feel like I try to do that on a personal and professional basis because I'm blessed enough to where they intertwine. So when I meet with city council members, I'm there for work, but I'm also there for my people. And so it's been a blessing to be able to do that. And, but yeah, ancestral memory is deep, that it's very real, and it causes a lot of harm and a lot of love in our people, and I think being able to put a name to it, I remember when intergenerational trauma and historical trauma was first being talked about, like people are like, yes, that's the name, like that's what it is, that's what's going on in our communities. And by being able to name it, I think was allowed us to begin the healing process. So it was actually, it's a really beautiful thing to be able to talk about ancestral memory and our ancestors and what they've gone through and the beauty and the pain, and that it's all with us still today. So just my 2 cents on that. So we'll go on to the next question. The next question is, what is something that you wish others knew about the work that you do? And feel free to kind of talk a little bit about the work that you do too, so put it into some context. But what are some things you wish other people knew about that?
That it's really, really, really hard. I don't think yeah, it's really, really, really hard. hard. I have what I call my 9-to-5 job, right, which is working with tribal community. And I love it. I get to work directly with community members. And then there's my other work that I do outside of that. That's the community work. I'm trying to bring good fire back to our lands. I want people to have our traditional foods. And this is hard. This is really, really hard to do when you also have to live and have money to pay for your gas, for your food, for your home, for your mortgage. This is an expensive place to live. And we are all out there giving back to our community, and it's hard work. And you know, I've had some wonderful opportunity to walk on lands that many of our community members haven't been able to. And you know, that's my privilege, I guess, you know, and I've been really blessed by my ancestors to be able to set foot on places that maybe none of our ancestors have yet, or very few. You know, I really think that's what's important to recognize, is the hard work each of us is doing, whether it's revitalizing language, whether it's sharing intergenerational knowledge and about our foods and plants, talking about the traumas in our family so that we can work through the trauma. It's very, very, very hard work, but we're doing the work, and that's what's important. That's what I have to say. I'm sure others have other thoughts here.
Thanks, Teresa.
Teresa, I'll echo a lot of what you said is so true. Working for the Land Trust for 17 years, you know, I felt, and not to minimize my place there, but land is complicated and it's political and it's a lot. You can own your land, but you don't own the rights to the water, you don't own your rights to the minerals, and you only have so much above that. It's complicated. As somebody that works with people that are dying, there is, if we heal ourselves, it enables us to go out into the community. We have to take I don't know, it's about radical self-care. And I always hear these institutions calling upon us to do some free work and volunteer. We need a Native American person. And my response is always, well, have you called the Native Americans? And they want numbers, and they want, it's like, go build a relationship with the Native community, because, you know, I'm not giving up my people. You know, build a relationship, and then you can talk. But, you know, there's no mention of stipends. There's this expectation that we should be doing all this free work because we, you know, we're the people of the land. And it's like, yeah, we live in one of the wealthiest communities. And I would say that it's time to ante up. Pay us not because, you know, it's not about money, but know that we are suffering financially, some of us, and we don't own our own homes, and we have to make a living. We have children. The youth need some spending money. I don't know. You know, mostly I'm a human being. I want the community to know that I'm a human being first, and respect. I pause because I get emotional, having to talk about myself to get a message through. Sometimes I don't know what the message is. I am at a loss at where we're at. And I feel like we are doing a fast slide backwards. And we need help, and we need lifting, and we need each other. So, something that I want others to know about me is that I'm here to help carry you. I'm here to help assist you in any way that I can. And I can't take it all on by myself. But I know collectively, when we're in community together, it's a sight to be seen. We learn a lot. We feed off of each other. I went to a DRIP workshop for 4 days, a Declaration of Rights for Indigenous People. And I had to sit amongst, I think there was 100 Native Californians, people from all over, coming into one room, a low budget situation. And we had to send somebody to the UN. It was kind of a mock thing. So we divided into 3 groups. I think there was like 33 people in a group. And we had to come up with what the community needed. It was the most empowering thing that I had ever witnessed. Sitting with strangers, coming up with a plan, and then sending somebody to go and fight for us in 2 or 3 minutes, because that's how much time we get. That's how much airtime we get. But it was empowering. AIM was there, and the American Indian Movement. I have to say that out loud because it's a powerful group. They'll yell and they'll stomp and they'll sing and they'll make noise, where sometimes I don't have the courage to do that. So Roberta told me that as a Tomo community, that it takes a community to build that boat, to build it, to nurture it, to take it all the way to Limu. So it doesn't matter if you're not paddling. It doesn't matter if you didn't carve. Are you feeding us? Are you holding us? Anyway, that was a profound comment, and I just want us to remember. And, back to Joy's book. Joy, I say that like she's my friend. I did meet her. I have a picture with her. She speaks of love, loss, heartache, heartbreak. We traverse through her life story, our life story, the life story of our ancestors. I love her reference to artists and poets of our time. As she lyrically and poetically speaks to history, nature, her homeland, your homeland, our homeland. She speaks to the history in a way that speaks to my heart, a raw reality of growing up Native. And she takes us on this journey of dancing through our tears. And that's how I feel. The book is powerful, and I don't know that I would have ever sat through the entire thing, because I read backwards, and sometimes I start from the middle and I read upside down, and it's not, there's no strategy behind it. But this time I read every page and every poem, and even wrote in the book, which is, it's pretty bad. But it reminded me of my family, and it reminded me of situations, and it, I just was there with her. And that tells you a little bit about something I wish that you knew about the work that I do. I'm still exploring that and still willing to jump on anybody's bandwagon and call me when you go marching. I'll hold the backup. I got you.
Yes, Nancy. Thank you for that. I could listen to you guys speak all day. Thank you for sharing. How about you, Kelly? Do you want me to repeat the question? What is something that you wish others knew about the work that you do?
Well, there's a lot. That's a big question too. All these questions are big questions, by the way. That's something I wish y'all knew. But yeah, so to reiterate, yeah, what Nancy said, pay us, because the fact that we are in the spaces that we're in, doing the work to get recognized, the fact that we have to fight for our land and be, quote, resilient, right, Dana? Like, the fact that all those things have to happen is when they're like, oh, get over it, y'all weren't oppressed. And it's like, that's literally evidence of our oppression. Like, what are you doing? And yeah, another thing I wish they knew was that the work we do is dangerous. So they need to be out there protecting us. The work we're doing as Indigenous people, as Indigenous women, Indigenous queer people up on this panel, it's dangerous and we need to be protected. We need allies. We're doing land protection, we're doing water protection, we're doing work in our communities that puts targets on our backs by inside people in our communities and outward people. So yeah, we need strength, we need numbers. And something also I wish that people knew is that the work we're doing isn't always supported by all of our community members. I think that brings up a lot of things. And maybe I've been talking a lot about like what is worth being said in spaces. And I think it's important to acknowledge that everything that happens in our spaces, we won't acknowledge like outwardly in like a public setting or like in settings that aren't with, or that are just with people who aren't in our communities. We won't say a lot of that because it's like why is that being said? What is it going to get done? I think that's another important thing that people need to recognize is that we're doing what needs to get done, and we're doing what needs to be done for bigger reasons than why we're doing it. We're doing it for the survival of our people. We're doing it for the survival of our communities, of our culture, of our language, and culture that encompasses like language, art, like all of our things that we do and all of our things that we hold, like song. And we're doing it for just the survival of our Mother Earth. I think doing our art in turn like helps mental illness and like being paid, like all the things that we need in our communities, right? Being paid, being uplifted by our allies, being recognized in academia, being recognized in city council meetings where we have more than 2 to 3 minutes to talk. All of that contributes to how Indigenous people are able to uplift the communities that we're a part of, and not just our Indigenous communities, or communities that we're around, like Santa Barbara. I think one of the important things that I do in my work is bring youth together. And I think it's really interesting to see how our youth thrive when Indigenous voices are heard in the classroom, when there's a land acknowledgement, however, quote, performative or non-performative it may be. Like, that's helping, our mental illness. And I've been actually talking a lot about how like the performative way of like land back is actually a good tactic both to like keep people distracted and to like uplift us mentally and spiritually, and just like to know that people are there, right? So personally, I don't see that as performative land backing, but because it uplifts our mental health and allows us to do community work and like gets that spark going. Yeah, so again, like that's that same theme, right? We're doing things and saying things that get things done or spark that fire, you know? Um, and yeah, what else? I feel like I had a couple other things, but yeah, that's all that's coming to mind right now. So yeah, it's dangerous, support us, and also pay our people, because it's not the only work we do. And we need space. Give us space. Like, this space is good. Give us space or we'll take it. Yeah, kakinalin.
That's amazing. And feel free to cut me off, Kelly, if you remember what you were going to say. So for me, and I have lots of dogs outside, so they're saying hello to everybody, just so you know. Say hi back. Hello. So I think for me, something I wish other people knew about the work I do, a lot of stuff. I feel like, you know, oftentimes I feel like I had camera like in my like mind, and so I could just like share with people like what I sometimes like what happens in my life, because the work is hard. And it's not just professional work, right? Like I go to work and, you know, I work for Tribal TANF, and so we do, you know, cash aid assistance and help Native families in need. But even that is hard, right? Because of the barriers that people face to be able to access care is really difficult, right? I think to rely on the federal government to give us guidelines on who and who not can accept aid is very difficult for me to do day to day. You know, we'll have people come in that don't have proper quote unquote documentation, and not being able to provide them services is very rough. I mean, obviously we can try to do the prevention work, the prevention side, and offer them services through that, because we can do that. But you have to turn away a family that's in need because they're not part of a federally recognized tribe, or their family is not part of the California Indian judgment rolls. That's really difficult, you know, and I think, you know, me and my staff, that's something that it's hard for us to do that. It's very difficult to do. One of the other things I think that is really difficult to do is to work with various agencies, especially the non-Native agencies. I spend a lot of time doing community cultural awareness trainings, whatever that really means. I guess it's just to try to educate as much as you possibly can, but that is extremely traumatizing and triggering work. Having to go into extremely white corporate spaces and talk about your history, your people, your trauma, but also your resiliency is very difficult. You know, you have people say extremely racist things and not realize that they're racist, you know, like, you're still here, you know, like, we didn't know you guys were still here. I hear that at least once every time I do these presentations. I'll hear things such as, we didn't know you guys spoke more than one language, you know. We hear some pretty heavy things. Like, I've had people try to convert me to their religions. I've had people say some really gnarly things, and you know, you go home and that sticks with you. You know, I'm lucky that I have aunties and relatives that teach me how to flush that out and try to move on from that, but it's very difficult to do. And that's just my work life, you know, and then I go from that to, you know, being vice chair of a tribe, and that's very difficult. Lateral oppression and trauma is very real in our communities, and we don't always treat each other the way that we should treat each other. And trying to navigate that, trying to put out fires with that, is also very difficult to do. You know, advocating for your people, whether it's Tribal TANF or whether it's BVBMI, advocating at a county level, state level, city level, organizational level, it doesn't stop. You know, it never ends. You know, my work is constant, and it's all the time. And I'm blessed and I'm grateful and I'm thankful every day that I'm allowed to do it. But it's difficult and it's hard, because there are some days where you sit back and it's hard to see the positive. I'll be real about it. It's hard to see that light sometimes because you see so much negativity a lot of times. And but again, I rely on my community, I rely on my land to kind of pull me back out of that and remind me of why we do the work that we do. But it's not easy, when people are like, oh, just come down and do a presentation, it'll be fine, it'll be great. It's like they don't know the mental capacity that goes into that, and like all of you guys are saying, a lot of times they don't pay us. I can't tell you how many times I've done work that I haven't gotten paid for. And it took a white lady to be like, hey, you need to get paid for this stuff, and I'm like, shoot, yeah, you're right, I should be getting paid for this stuff. So it's difficult, man. The work is hard, it's emotional, because we're not just fighting for a cause, we're fighting for our survival, and we're fighting for our people, and we're fighting for the next generations to come. So that's a whole different level of what we call work. So, and, we're trying to do it all within a capitalist system, and that's difficult too, production, produce, not valuing labor, not valuing humans, not valuing our planet. And we see it all the time, and it gets really hard. And then I think the things that we would use to heal ourselves, which are ceremony, song, we don't always have those, right? Because of that colonization, because of that missionization, sometimes we're not taught some of the traditions that would typically heal our people and heal our communities. And so that can be rough too at times, that can be difficult. So it's not an easy journey for sure. With that being said, moving into the next question, it's a pretty good segue. Healing's important for our people. I think there's so many different ways to heal, and I feel like the word healing is now one of those words that everybody uses all the time. It's kind of like, healing, we're all just going to heal, and it's like, I feel pressure to heal, like I need to heal from the pressure of having to heal. It's crazy sometimes, but I think it's important, and I think everybody has their own journey and their own methods of what healing looks like. So if you guys wouldn't mind sharing, how have you used art or language or really anything as a healing method for yourself and also your community?
I'll speak to that. I think in 2001, I left the business management in LA and literally went to the mountain and cried for 3 years. And I didn't work, and I didn't pay my bills, and I didn't pay my credit cards, and I just kind of let everything fall apart. And then I said, oh, thanks to the institutions, I had a 401k, so I took out a lot of money and traveled the world. I went to Spain, I went to all the European colonizing countries. But sometimes you have to get in there to infiltrate. So I went to Paris and Barcelona. I went to Italy, Mexico, and I think that became my education. Traveling and seeing what other people are doing. I saw land, I saw beauty that took my breath away. And it made me realize in coming home that we have to take care of that. And, what's my carbon footprint? I think when Nona LaDuke was in Santa Barbara, and somebody had asked her, what can we do? And she said, stay home and take care of the place that you live. And that was kind of powerful. It's like, don't create this huge carbon footprint. I still like to travel. I'm sorry. I was in Florida recently, and I even have a better appreciation. I saw land and ocean and land and ocean and land and ocean. I stood on, it's a Tocobaga land in Seminole, and wondered how they lived. And it's a tropical environment. So, you know, I was thinking about my relatives in Guam and the health of the coastline. And art heals. Art heals. And I need that so that I'm not always, sometimes I go to the dark side because working with people that are dying, either physically or metaphorically because of drugs and alcohol, it's heavy work. Talk about heavy lifting. But yeah, art helps me in that. And then I realize I can't just do art for self. I have to do it for others. And, you know, I'm not the kind of artist that produces so I can sell. I'm the kind of artist that does it to help me talk story and get out the things that bring me pain. So I do a lot of that. And I am a member of a small production company that they do small films for the LGBTQT plus community, one story at a time. And they do good work. They're based in LA, but it's a group of 7 women, and we just get together and we do art and we talk, and it's healing. I'm the resident healer for them. I want to share everything that I know, you know, free to you. I'll charge the white people. But I want to share what I know to the younger people. I want to share wisdom with other people. I want to sit with us. And again, art heals. I'm getting carried away in my emotions, so I'm going to stop there and let somebody else go there.
I'd like to share a little bit because I think art takes so many different forms. Music is art, poetry is art. What we create with our hands is art. I remember the first time I coiled a basket. It was a number of years ago now, maybe 20 years ago. And a friend, somebody from the community said, that very first basket that you coil, you need to give that away. And I remember how much work I put in. My best friend has, I gave it to my best friend. He lives up in Oregon now, and also Native. And I just thought, what a beautiful thing to give of yourself and the work that you have, and you give it away. And that's, you know, that's really, really powerful. We create and we give away and share. And that's a treasure. It's just such a blessing to be able to do that. And, you know, poetry healed me when I was younger. I had a lot of trauma that I had to work through, and poetry healed me. The words I wrote healed me. And that's powerful. That's really, really powerful. And I still have the poetry I wrote when I was in college in, you know, the early 80s. It's a long time ago, folks. I'm old. And I read through it and I think to myself, wow, I was in a different place then, and I have healed so much through the words that I've written and what I processed back then. And that's really, really powerful. And I think when, you know, I have this beautiful instrument next to me, which was created by somebody in our community. and it was given to a friend of mine who then gave it to me. So it went in this circle from a Chumash person that lived in the LA area to a friend of mine who lived in the Bay Area to my hands right now. And that's the beauty of art. That really is. And whenever I hold this in my hands, it's right here, I know where it came from, the person who made it. I know his family. I know the family of the man who gifted it to me because he's my brother, the same one who received my coiled basket. And so that's the power of art. And that's what I have to say and share.
I'd like to go after that. Yeah, I think I love what both of you said. And I want to like re-emphasize that journey that our art takes. Like whatever that art is, like they see us through, our art sees us through so many stages of like, oh, what am I gonna do? Like curiosity, right? And I think about it a lot, and it kind of like, it's kind of an intersection between my like painting or like beading to my poet side. Like I kind of like make analogies out of my art into my like poetry side, and like it helps me with my art, my like painting helps me with my poetry. But yeah, so they see us through like that creative stage, and then the, oh, I'm excited, I'm gonna do it stage, to the, oh, I'm doing it and it's going great, and then I'm doing it and it's not going so great. And they see us through like all those stages, right? And then we give all that away, and it's like that was a whole life on its own. Like it had a whole journey. Like it saw us through literally so many stages. So yeah, just like grateful for you bringing that up for me, Teresa. um yeah, and it brings so much like humor and comfort. One of my friends, I don't know if everybody knows, man, came out of me. And it's a picture of me smiling looking down, and it says, my favorite one is my basket of acorns looking up at me after I've gathered them. And it's a picture of me looking down and smiling. And I was like, wow, like what great things we bring each other, and like what great things we bring our art. And like, like that, the art itself, like yes, we're bringing the art, but the art has its own journey and it tells its own story. Like it tells what it saw too. And so I think that's important as well. On a separate note, I think that yeah, like that humor, actually on kind of the same note, that humor I've seen a lot of through social media, and like through new sort of coping mechanisms as Indigenous youth through this world. There's been a lot of humor, like that meme that Manny made of me. uh I think humor is one of our ways that we get through this world, and that we connect to each other. And that's a super big one for me. So yeah, like bringing more water to our communities, I see art as that. Watering our communities and helping growth and giving life. And water is life, right? So in that analogy, our art is our life, and what sustains us. I think we couldn't survive as a community if we didn't have creators. And that goes for a lot of things, like creators of space, because that is art. Creators of like a barbecue, if you create a barbecue and like organize and bring a bunch of people together, that's art. And yeah, I just see a lot of good things that come out of giving our art away again. Yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you guys for going over that. And I think for me, I'm have experience, you know, kind of not making it super personal, but I think in looking at like my job and jobs that I've had, and one of the things that when working with the Native community, whatever organization it is, one of the things that we usually do is we make art together. We make art as a community together. And because, you know, we talk about how culture is a form of prevention. And so, you know, at SNAC at the Native American Health Center up in Sacramento, we would have cultures prevention classes. And so we would have people come together and we would teach people how to bead, you know, we would teach people how to sand pine nuts and clean pine nuts. And as gnarly as it is, those little pine nuts, you know, like we'd laugh and we get together and we would teach people about tradition and culture and the beautiful art and how healing, not, you know, Kelly, I think you said something really important where art takes so many forms and it's so many different things. And you know, just bringing people together is art when in itself, you know, and I think that is healing too. So not only do we bring people together, and we do it at TANF as well. Sarah Moreno does a great job at leading a lot of our classes like that, but she, you know, we come together and that in itself is healing, but then learning about traditions and learning stories and learning songs and that is healing within itself. So you're in this space of just of healing and gathering and community. And you know, I think as Native people, that's one of our superpowers, you know, is gathering and sharing knowledge and healing ourselves. And while we heal ourselves, we then start to heal community as well. And so it's a really beautiful thing, and I'm really lucky to have played a part in that. And yeah, so culture is prevention. I'm all about that, and how healing it can be to work with your hands and work with people and just be in a space with relatives and community. It's a beautiful thing. It's really beautiful. So that's all I got. I know we were going to throw it back to Oliver for some Q&A. We're right on time. Shoot.
Very
Art,
nice.
art right in front of us, literally right on time.
Very nice, y'all. Thanks so much for your responses. I'm gonna go ahead and pass it over to Lisa for Q&A, but we can kind of pass it back and forth, Lisa, depending on the responses we have.
Sure. So I actually do not have any questions from the audience. So now would be a great time if you do have a question to type it in the chat, type it in the Q&A. Let us know because we'd love to hear them.
And I'm not sure for all attendees what that looks like, but for me, I can see the Q&A on the bottom of my screen. So you hit the 2 speech bubbles, that's where you can find a place to type in a question and we can pass it to one of our amazing panelists. While people are, you know, checking that out, I do have a question though. Teresa, you were talking about how poetry saved your life, which, thinking about that statement, wow, that's powerful. And I was curious about which poets have inspired you. You could talk a little bit about that.
And it's not necessarily poets, but writers have really inspired me over my lifetime. And certainly Joy Harjo's right up there. Leslie Marmon Silko is another one. Powerful, powerful writer. And then some really off the beaten path poets that go back to what I would call the Beat generation. One is Philip Whalen, who became a Zen monk. One of my favorite poets, really just really, really amazing. And Gary Snyder from way back when. And really the poetry that I wrote was very powerful because there was just a lot of trauma going into my life, at the time, and a lot of death, actually. So much more so than most people see in their lifetime occurred before the age of 17 for me. And it didn't really end there, but it makes you change quite dramatically. And I put it into words. I had to put it into words, and there was a lot going on in the world at that time too, just like there is now. And the words helped me heal and become a stronger woman. That's really, and I'm hoping that I've passed that on to my children, because I think it's important for them to have, youth especially, all youth, to have hope right now, and to glean that from us older people. Us older people. So those are some of my, some of my thoughts. I really, I read so much when I was younger, so I can't say one writer influenced me. I love so much poetry. I really, really do. Thank you for the question.
We do have a couple of questions from the audience members. We'll start with what was one of your favorite poems from the book? All the panelists, if you've had the opportunity to read it.
I'll start because I have paper clips in my book. The poem called Honoring, which is on page 68 of the book, is one of the ones that really, really moved me. Yeah. I'm not going to read it. You can read it, but get the book and read it on your own.
Singing Everything moved me. And I'm not going to read it, but it made me look at another poem that was written by Hafiz in 1300s, I think. As we sometimes forget that we were created for joy, our minds too busy, our hearts too busy, and too heavy for us to remember that we were called to dance, the sacred dance for life. We were created to smile, we were created to sing, to love, to lift others up. Creator, untangle our feet from all that traps us, free our souls so that we may dance, and that our dancing and laughter may be contagious, and let this be the medicine that heals. And sorry, Hafiz, you're not here to defend yourself, but I added something. I altered it a little bit to speak to my Indigenous heart. But yes, words are very powerful, and I am reminded to use them carefully and mindfully, and always my intention is for the highest good of all. My ex-husband, I did that for a bit, was a member of the Brown Berets. If you remember that organization, it's they were the baby Black Panthers. They didn't quite get to that status. But I was into Audre Lorde and Angela Davis. And why Black women? Because they spoke louder than I could. And they were powerful, and they were role models. And I wasn't aware of Native or other, I hadn't been introduced to them yet. But certainly there are inspiring, incredible writers out there that are published and not published. So I try to read a little bit from different poets. the ones that you mentioned are also great. So thanks for that reminder.
Okay, if no one else wants to pop in, we'll go to the next question. So do you have words of wisdom for your younger self going into advocacy work?
As a caregiver, I could speak to that. Know your own pain. Explore your own pain and suffering before you go out into the world. And there's a saying, I don't know who said it, but it's die now so that when you do die, you won't die. And basically, as healers, we have to clear all of that stuff before we go in. You know, it's like taking the oxygen mask, you first, and then you give it to somebody, kind of that rule of thumb. So I would say shore up and know your own pain. So then when you're witnessing others and when you're being put to task to carry other burdens of our people, our families, that you stay balanced in a very cruel and complex world. I don't know that it's going to get better. I read this book called The Sacred Demise, and with the demise of any, I don't know, like the fall of the Roman Empire, when empires fall, and we're at this point now, something has to shift so that we can move forward. And it's our jobs as individuals and community to shore up so that we can carry each other.
I had an elder from a community who was also a teacher, who was a traditional doctor in his community, and he taught me some wonderful things. But one of the things that I think, if you do go into advocacy, as Nancy shared, is when people are pain and you're trying to heal them, you're taking in what they are releasing. That's a very traditional aspect. That's how people are healed. And so you must have a place to release that yourself. And a lot of that's usually done in very different ceremonies, but it's really important that you be able to release that yourself and to understand that when you go into this kind of work. I think that's really, really important. And it was a powerful teaching to me, because he too would, it was pretty amazing to see him doctor people in a traditional way. And that was a gift in and of itself in my lifetime, to watch something like that and be part of a healing like that. So I think that's very, very important to remember, the self-care and to care for ourselves and to advocate for ourselves as well as others. I think that's really, really important. So I think that's what I would tell my younger self if before I started advocating for others. What if I had known that back when?
I echo a lot with what you said of when we heal, we take on that. And that's something that I didn't know when I started especially victim advocacy work or survivor advocacy work. It's a whole different ballgame, and you don't, you're young and you just want to help people, but you don't always have the tools on how to heal. And so while I did that work about four years ago, I find myself still on that healing journey of healing just from that advocacy work. So it's, because residual trauma is very real, and taking that on is very real. And so I would totally tell myself when I was younger, like, it's important work, and it's life-changing work for myself too, but really practice releasing and not holding. And that's not an easy thing to do. So I agree with you 100%.
Alrighty, thank you all. If there's no final comments, I will go ahead and just let us, reflect on the words that have been spoken here today, and the amazing truth and emotion and power that's behind all of those things. And I'd like to ask for Kelly to close us out in a good way, so that our hearts may stay connected and strong.